All right, here we go. Hello, nerds for Yang.
Hello, nerds.
Hello, nerds.
Hello, nerds.
Hello, nerds.
Hello, nerds.
Hello, nerds.
I'm saying, now with this campaign, bang, dang, it's and true. Come roll with the Yang Gang.
Hello, nerds.
Hello, nerds.
Chris, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you, Tom. It's good to talk to you. Good to see you.
So for our audience, number one, the Nerds for Humanity audience seems to enjoy when we have pro-Trump people on the show, because we tend to be able to kind of just better understand where people are coming from. And of course, there's like a friendly debate on various things.
Yeah.
But then the second thing was I have mentioned in the past that I went to high school in New Jersey, in Bergen County, like typically fairly conservative, like probably more Republican than Democrats there, at least. But when we were there, would that be fair?
It depends, though. It depends what town you lived in. Like where I was from, it was more conservative, more Republican. I came from a town of police officers, plumbers, electricians, people like that. In some of the wealthier towns, maybe in in Bergen County and in Rockland County, it was a little different. It was a little more liberal.
Yeah.
Kind of like coastal elite liberals.
Oh boy. We got the Golden Gate Bridge right here.
I know. I had to say that.
You've entered enemy territory.
We did grow up 20 miles from New York City.
Yeah.
So we were exposed to, a lot of different views, but it always seemed 50-50, just like it does now.
Yeah. So for everyone else out there, Chris and I went to high school together, and that was how was your experience? So people know it was an all boys Catholic school. So it's a different environment than a typical high school experience. What when you look back, how did you feel about it?
Well, it's different now than it was then. It was very academia heavy when we went there, and now it's very sports heavy.
Oh,
because I guess they figured out you can make a lot more money with good sports teams. So, but when we were there, a lot of the alumni scholarships went to really smart kids, and we had a lot. We had a lot of smart kids going there when we went there. You being one of them, and now it's more athletic driven, but I'm sure they still have academia. I haven't, my experience was good. We had a lot of good teachers, a lot of smart teachers. They didn't really put their influence on, political influence on us. They just taught us the curriculum basically and wanted us to be good people.
Yeah. I guess that's a sad thing about education, which is if you want to, especially independent education and universities, private universities, if you want to raise a lot of alumni money, winning national football championships does it, and getting a lot of national merit scholars, nobody gives money because of that.
Plus having a good finance department. I went to a college very heavy. It was a teacher's college. So most of our alumni, 90% are teachers. So therefore, they don't have a lot of money to contribute.
Yeah.
So, they do contribute their time, their energy and some of their money, but we don't have a lot of huge donors.
Yeah. You don't get a lot of new libraries and buildings with people's names on them.
Well, we got lucky once. Jimmy Fallon graduated from there. So he donated the communications building. He gave $1 million, which was nice.
Yeah. Well, Jimmy's done all right. Jimmy's done all right in life.
Yeah, he's done pretty good for himself.
So now you're still in the tri-state area, right?
I live in Jersey City currently. My parents are still in Sloatsburg, New York. So I'm still back and forth. I visit them. So yeah, I'm in the tri-state. I've never left really.
One of the things, by the way, Chris, I should say to you, when I look back on my days in high school, I remember you being a very kind and warm person, and I was a little bit dorky and nerdy, so I always appreciated the big tall kids who are kind and friendly. So I appreciate that, man. Thank you for not being like a bully.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that too. That's very nice. I've heard that a lot.
Yeah, no,
To be honest with you.
you're a good dude. So you also since we've caught up recently on Facebook and kind of through direct messages, we've been talking about politics, and it strikes me that I'm really excited to have your perspective on the show because you're not hardcore anti-Trump, and you have like kind of a you're. It seems like you can see both sides. Like, what's your how would you describe your political like positioning, and where are you on this kind of
right
red
now,
blue thing?
Right now, Trump is a vehicle for the policies that I like. You know, he's a vessel. He's a vessel for people like me who are fed up with career politicians. You know, people who've been there for 30 plus years who don't have any new ideas. So he's kind of like a vessel. Like, even if I don't approve of some of the things he says and does, I agree with most of his policies, and he works hard.
Yeah. So it's if I were to kind of play that back,
Plus,
it sounds like
hold on, I have to add this too. You guys haven't. I mean, the Democrats haven't put up a good opponent. I mean, you reran a first lady. I mean, come on, what is that? And now you have Joe Biden, who's 0 for 2, and he was 0 for 2 in his prime. And now you're running him out there again, and he's kind of getting old. And, you know, I love old people. Most of my customers are 75 plus, and they're sharp, you know, but I just don't understand your strategy, really, to be honest with you. I don't understand it. And then the Kamala Harris pick I disagreed with.
yeah.
Even from looking on the other side, I think she, as a prosecutor, she wasn't very popular. You know, she didn't get along with the PBA unions. She wasn't well liked. I mean, I just don't understand the strategy behind those two.
Well,
I told you privately, I liked your guy. Like, if I was hiring, I'd hire him.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you saw a little bit of Andrew Yang running, what was your reaction when you started learning about him?
Well, I told you what I thought. I thought he should wear a suit. I didn't think, I didn't think he should not wear a tie. You know, I thought that was nice if you're running a business, but if you're going to run the company, you should throw the suit on. You know, I thought that, but I like the way he talks to people. I like that he's more of a populist than any of your other candidates. You know, he listens to people, and he's run companies, and he's been successful. So, you know, he's somebody you'll listen to. You'll sit at the table with him any day.
Yeah. Yeah, that the thing I loved about him was he seemed to find a way to get out of this red versus blue kind of like vibe, where right now it's like each side positions the other side as if they're, you know, the devil incarnate. And, you know, I feel like he was able to just say like, hey, we have problems that we want to fix. Here are some ways that we can try and fix them. Here's why I think they might work. But sadly, like, that doesn't get people fired up. It doesn't get people like packing stadiums, you know?
I understand. Yeah, that's true.
It's the red meat packs the stadiums.
Well, Trump's a funny guy. He's got a lot of practice. He's been in the public eye his whole life. He had a #1 rated TV show. He's already been a best-selling author, I think, twice. You know, he's used to this stuff. And I mean, don't forget, he was a Planned Parenthood donating Democrat most of his life. You know, he recently just flipped. I mean, he was part of the elite, the coastal elites. He was one of them, and he basically jumped off ship. And I think that he's a very populist president. I think that he listens to the average guy, and I actually think he cares about the average guy. I mean, why would he risk like his own wealth, his own reputation, his retirement, you know, like to be the president? I think he actually cares.
So a lot of you've called out an interesting kind of internal inconsistency, which is he speaks. A lot of people feel like he speaks for the working man, but he is like the furthest thing from a plumber or a pipe fitter or a construction worker. Like he literally like, you know, lives in a gold-plated building. And so like, do you find that, I mean, if I were to be kind of skeptical of him, I would say he's saying things to kind of get people fired up, but you know, deep down inside, he's still going to hang out in Manhattan and Mar-a-Lago. He's not like going to Sturgis.
And absolutely. And his father was rich, very wealthy before him. He started out with a huge loan after being afforded all the best, you know, schools. And, you know, but he took something small or big to some of us and he made it bigger. And he branded himself his whole life. And he's, you know, I mean, obviously he doesn't sugarcoat what he says. I mean, you know where he's coming from, good or bad. You know what he's thinking, which I kind of like. Nothing seems crafted with him, you know, like it does with Biden. It seems like Biden has handlers and people are telling him what to do and say. And, you know, he relies on polling and he relies on research groups and groups to tell him like what his next move should be. And I don't like that. You know, like if you want a real leader, you need somebody who knows how to make decisions. You know, you need somebody who's confident in themselves, and we know that Donald doesn't lack that. He's very self-assured. That
is definitely true. Do you did you watch any of the Republican convention, any of the speeches and stuff?
I did. I did.
So one of the things that you said that kind of perked me up a little bit was like you always know what he's thinking, and I kind of feel like I do know what he's thinking, and I feel like he's thinking that, you know, the sort of traditional culture is at risk, and we have to kind of push back against you know, excessive immigration or like civil unrest in the cities. But when I watched the convention, I also saw him like going out, or the Republican Party going out of their way to have a lot of black speakers and talking about public housing and swearing in people from like, you know, Africa to become citizens. And I was like, wow, that's really interesting, because I don't feel like that's where he's going. I feel like he's kind of like trying to dilute and maybe kind of take the edge off what he really thinks. Or when you saw that convention, what was your reaction? Because I was like, they're putting on a show.
Honestly, because the speakers were so authentic and they were real, true stories, I accepted it. I think they did go heavy to try and like maybe go after that vote. But I do, after listening to what the people had to say and hearing their stories, I was like, wow, this is authentic. This doesn't seem contrived. And these people are absolutely Trump supporters. You know, they're not being paid under the table to go speak like this. You know, this is real. So it was nice. It was really actually. I was in favor of it. Yeah.
And the same thing with like, there were a lot of speeches about how Trump has been so good for women and pro women. I also, again, like biased audience, I was like, oh my God, they're trying to make him seem like Mother Teresa now, you know, like a suffragette all of a sudden. But you also felt like it was.
That's just politics. I mean, we all know his past. I mean, you know, he's had 3 wives. You know? I mean, he's a billionaire. I would hate to think what I would do if I was a billionaire. You know what I mean? I just.
He definitely lived the billionaire lifestyle.
But I don't, you know, like all those guys, though, there's not one of those guys. I mean, the one thing I liked about Obama was that he was a good husband. He was a good father. You know, he was a good family man. You know, that was cool about him. That was what I liked about him. You know, and I think Trump is that guy now. You know, look at his kids. His kids are pretty awesome. I mean, they're very impressive too. And they've been in the game a long time. They've been on TV. They know how it works. Like, I couldn't believe how impressive they were speaking. Like good for them, you know, and I give him a lot of credit for that. You know, the guy never drank. He never smoked. You know, he always kept a level head. He's always had to make big decisions. You know, he didn't go into the White House not having to make big decisions that affect a lot of people. Like, he already knew how to do that.
So I'm sure a lot of people are probably wondering, like, okay, big decisions, you know, COVID's obviously been in the news a lot. Like, what's your take on how he's handled that, because I kind of feel like he hasn't done a great job.
Well, in the beginning, he did a really good job by stopping flights from China in January. Like that was awesome. Like
Yep,
that was.
I've heard him mention that once or twice.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, but that was a good move. It saved a
Yeah.
lot of people. Biden and Pelosi were all over him for it, and it ended up being the right call, which I applaud him for, which was fantastic because at the time they were like, you know, calling him racist for doing it, which was ridiculous. He was just trying to protect us. Leaving it in the governor's hands and the local authorities' hands, I mean, I guess each state had to govern themselves. I don't know if I would have went that route. I mean, me personally, I would have told everyone what to do. You know, I would have made federal mandates, but I think because it was an election year, maybe he just kind of like, let's see what happens. So we'll see. I think that we'll have to wait to see how it was handled. I don't think he mishandled it. I don't think he handled it great, but how do you handle it great? Like, what are you supposed to do? I mean, he left it up. I'm in Jersey now. We still can't dine inside. I mean, that's ridiculous. But I can drive to my parents in New York and I can dine inside. It's like 10 miles apart. You remember, you lived in Mawa. You can stand in New Jersey and New York at the same time. I mean, so we're seeing this guy Murphy totally screw this up, totally screw the gyms and the restaurants. And at least Cuomo didn't screw up as bad as Murphy, and he allowed certain things to happen a little earlier, but I don't know. And a lot of these guys don't want his help.
Yeah,
You know,
I guess I feel like the risk is if you say every governor, it's like dealer's choice. Number one, those governors, those states, they don't have the resources. Like they don't have the NIH, the CDC. They don't have the visibility like nationwide. So I would have hoped that whoever was president at the time would have said, look, you know, here are the different phases of reopening. And in order to unlock this phase, you need to hit these numbers that are measurable in terms of infection rates or whatever. Or hospital utilization. And it's just a math problem. Like when you're ready, you can reopen. And if you get out of hand, you got to clamp back down. But it's not up to each governor to just kind of wing it.
I don't know. I mean, you can argue either side. I mean, if you're the governor of a state, you probably have a lot more knowledge of the state's capabilities, the state's resources, the things they need to get, the things they need to do than President Trump would. Unless you gave him all that information and then asked him to decide on it. And then he would have to do that 50 times over. So I don't know. I think that it was definitely the governor's responsibility. I think some did well, some didn't. I mean, I only focused on really, you know, 2 states, New Jersey and New York, because that's where I am. You know, I wasn't really following how the governors in the other states. I know some got certain press. I know, you know, some governors got applauded, you know, for certain things that they did, but you can't really blame Donald Trump for what happened with COVID. I mean, it's something that affected the whole entire world. And I don't know, when you were in Sweden, when you were in Sweden, you pretty much came back during this.
Yeah. It's Switzerland.
So
everybody thinks I was in Sweden. I was in Switzerland, but close.
Switzerland. What's wrong with me?
But yeah, like when I came back, what I noticed was 2 things. That the Swiss lockdown was actually less aggressive than parts of the US, but the compliance with the lockdown was almost like 99%. And I kind of feel like when you want to mitigate against these things, the strength of the mitigation is as strong as the weakest implementation.
Oh,
so
God.
like,
that's why we're in big trouble,
right? Like, so it doesn't matter that like the Bay Area, like we can't dine in either, but it doesn't matter because if I drive a few state boundaries over, they're literally having parties in the middle, you know, inside indoors and like fraternity parties and all this crazy shit. And you're like, all right, well, what is the point of me going the extra mile when other people are just, it's like having a no smoking rule in a restaurant where like 2-3 tables are just popping away.
For me personally, you know, my parents are early 70s. You you know, my mom is in great shape, but my dad's like a little pre-diabetic. So, you know, I want to make sure that they're okay. I
Yeah.
wear a mask to protect them. You know, it's funny. I've seen fights in Jersey City. I've seen people like in stores yelling at people not wearing masks, and I've seen pushing matches. Like
How
I've
does
seen
that
them,
so what how does that happen? Oh, so someone yells at another person for not wearing a mask, and then the non-mask person does what? Leaves or actually like,
no, just basically says mind your business. And then the
oh.
other person says, "No, I'm not going to mind." I've seen some weird stuff. So
So,
I think everybody should wear a mask,
yeah.
obviously. You know, and it stinks because I've had good friends' parents die.
Yeah.
Our local UPS guy died. He was 58. Our
Mm,
ward councilman died
yeah.
in Jersey City. He was 59.
Yeah.
And it will
Yeah.
all related.
There's this narrative that it only affects like nursing homes or people who live in like big cities, and I don't think that's true. I think this thing is spreading.
There was a Don Bosco graduate, our high school. He was a 30-year-old coach, varsity coach at I think Cliffside Park High School, and he passed away from it. He was 30.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Freddie Freeman, the guy in the Atlanta Braves,
Yeah.
that like 6'5", like, you know, huge, strong guy. He had it. He said it for like 14 days. He had like 104 fever, and it was no joke. Like it was not something, you know, that you want to toil with if you can avoid it. So,
Yeah.
you know, they've got to take it seriously. I mean, the rates are going down. New York is getting better. New Jersey's getting better. So I'm hopeful. You know, we'll see what happens.
So when you were watching the RNC, and I don't know if you noticed, for me, I was like, wow, that South Lawn is shoulder to shoulder, people sitting with no masks.
Yeah, but
Like,
you know that really rich people and really important people, it doesn't matter for them. Like the VMAs are tonight, the Video Music Awards. They're not making any of those celebrities quarantine when they came or when they leave. You know, there's different rules for different classes, and you know, and I
But
think that was a display of that.
don't you feel like that sets the wrong example? Like, even if all of those guys tested negative, doesn't it seem to like, if I were in middle America watching this, I'd be like, look, you know, all these super important people, nobody's wearing masks there.
You can interpret it that way. I mean, honestly, the way I looked at it was the Democrats had no audience, so it was pretty hollow. It looked like a Zoom meeting. And since they actually had a crowd, it was more human.
Oh yeah. Oh, I agree. The theatrics and the,
you know,
the,
like
the
I
vibe
really think the optics of that was awesome. I don't think the average person is going to read into it as far as you did and say that's not a good example. I mean, somebody looking for flaws is going to say that, but somebody who's not, they're just going to be like, oh, you know, that was pretty cool.
And so,
and then you can also say that since the Democrats, Biden and Harris especially, haven't condemned the protesters. I mean, those guys are pretty shoulder to shoulder too. I mean, they're pretty close.
Oh, I agree. I think they're just as bad. I mean, no, that's just as dangerous from a health point of view. Anytime you're inside of 6 feet without a mask on, whether you're Democrat or Republican or whatever, that you're just increasing the risk of spreading this thing. And I think it's a selfish act, because as a country, if we can't reopen soon, like, it's costing us a lot of suffering. If
you own a gym or a restaurant, I mean, I feel really, really horrible for, like, it's how could you, that's tough. You know, imagine having a non-essential business.
Yeah.
You know, that you worked your whole life to have.
And you can't, and if you don't have the luxury of working from home over Zoom, you know, then you're screwed.
Yeah. Then you're screwed. Exactly.
Yeah, so I kind of feel like, look, I don't like wearing masks. It's not like a fun thing, but if it helps us get a little more control so that we can slowly reopen and get people back to work, like, that's a good thing.
Well, people are going back to school. I think around here it's October 1st. I think people are going back. And, you know, if you work in a supermarket or you work in a liquor store or you're a cop or a nurse, you know, you're like, wait a second, we never closed. You know, the schools can open. So I mean, there's arguments out there. Obviously, if I was a teacher and I had a pre-existing condition, I'd be scared to death. Um, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's I just hope we can get closer to a vaccine, which could take 6 more years. It could take 6 more months. We have no idea. I think. Well, I don't know. It's unpredictable. I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
I hear that the winter makes it worse.
And then you got the flu as well, which is typically 50,000 people a year die just in this country die of that.
I mean, statistically, the number's low. I mean, it's less than what is it, like 1%, or less.
Yeah, there's I think we have
lot.
300 million, so 10% would be 30 million, 1% would be 3 million. So we're at like 0.1% that died, 300,000. We're approaching 300,000.
But think about it. Not only I think in the Vietnam War, 76,000 people died. So
yeah, so
300,000 is a pretty big number.
300. I mean, that's when we were hitting 1,000 a month. I mean, that's like 9/11 every couple of months kind of thing. So that I don't think any of us want that. But yeah, that twindemic combo of COVID-19 plus an intense flu. And then
isn't it sad, Tom? Isn't it sad that both sides kind of politicized it and they didn't just work really hard for us?
It's totally sad. It's freaking ridiculous.
It's totally sad. To have this politicized really upset me. I can't get upset. I expect our leadership to let me down a lot. So I think that the way they didn't work together on this one is just terrible. It would have been nice if they just were all right, let's just help the people now. Let's set an example for the entire world of how we're going to do this. And I don't think that's on Trump. I think that's on both sides. This should have been nonpartisan, and that.
Well, what do you think?
Both sides politicized it like little babies, and it was horrifying.
At the end of the day, the president is kind of like the CEO of the country. Shouldn't he be accountable?
Nobody will work with him when he needs people in the House to work with him, and they won't. There's nothing he can do. And that Obama experienced the same thing. You remember when they tied his hands?
Mm-hmm.
There were times, before they had the House, the Senate.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I remember.
You remember that. So they do the same thing to Trump. If he comes up with a good idea, they'll find 1,000 ways why it's not, even if it's totally a good idea. So it's a failure on both sides. I mean, Trump, he's not the type to win them over, and he's just going to straight shoot them and hope they agree because he thinks he's right. I wish they worked together better. It would be nice for us, I think. Wait, are you there?
Oh, now I'm back. Okay. Let me ask you this, Chris. A lot of folks would argue, myself included, that at least until May, from January to May, Trump didn't talk about this like it was a big deal. He really downplayed it. Do you feel like he paid appropriate sort of urgency and attention to it in the early days?
Yes. We had to watch him on TV every day, and he spoke for over an hour. He could have made it 10 minutes every day, and he spoke for an hour and a half. We were laughing at him every single day, Donald, zip it up, close it up, done. No, I think of course he did. I think he should have wore a mask sooner to set a physical example.
Right.
But he addressed it every day. He was into it every day. I mean, we had to listen to his press conferences every day. I mean,
so I agree with you. He definitely had the press conferences, and he did not shy away from the camera.
No.
But I would also say what he said when he was on camera was very much we're doing such a great job. We've got this under control. And it wasn't here's my 5-point plan. Here are the metrics I want to measure. These states have reopened too soon. I want to call BS on that. These states, their numbers are fine. They should actually reopen
he said
now.
That Dr. Fauci was wrong.
Yeah.
There was a lot of things that he did.
Okay, But how is that helpful? It's like nobody knows what's going on. Like, who's in charge here?
Well, I think that he made it pretty clear the governors had to make decisions. I think that he didn't want to make. I don't know. It's a hard one to call. Like, think about it. Like, no one's ever handled a pandemic, like this. So there's no blueprint. There's no model. Like, it's like if you have to build a boat right away, they're like, Tom, Chris, you got to build a yacht, not a rowboat, a yacht. And we've never built a rowboat before. I don't know. I'm not going to criticize the way he handled it. Of course he said everything was great. Of course he wanted to be uplifting. He wanted, Donald Trump is a salesman, and he's a good salesman, and he's a good marketer, and he has a good message. Like a lot of people like to say, well, he cozies up to dictators. He does that to fool them, to charm them, to disarm them. He doesn't really like these people. He's just doing that.
You think
it's a plot.
He's playing a chess game with Kim Jong-il and Putin, and he's playing them.
Oh, totally. 100%. Just like the global elites played Obama when they gave him the Nobel Peace Prize, just to subdue him. They were like, oh, here you go, buddy. Take the Nobel Peace Prize. You didn't really do anything, but now you're in our pocket. And it worked. I think it worked. That's my opinion. I mean,
what do you think Obama did that was so terrible?
What do you mean terrible?
What did Obama do because he was in the pocket of the global elites, as you assert?
I don't like the Iran nuclear deal at all. I disagreed with that. But Obama, he was also pretty tough, though. He dropped a lot of bombs, don't forget.
Oh, yeah. He deported a lot of people, too.
No, I know.
Yeah.
Like, he had his... Listen, I didn't disagree with everything he did, but some of I didn't, the only good thing is, though, Trump's not running against Obama. He's running against Biden.
Dude, Obama would have crushed Trump if Obama could run for a third, had he been able to run for a third term.
It would have been so cool to watch. Those two debating would have been unbelievable.
It would have been two opposites, complete opposites. Right?
It would have been fantastic to watch. But that's the good thing. Like, Obama's done. So, he's now the has-been in chief, So thankfully,
so you don't miss him. You don't miss Obama.
Certain things, but no. I don't miss any of his policies. I don't miss. And then he was actually, compared to the Democrats now, he was very conservative.
Oh, yeah. He
was very conservative compared to the AOCs that we have now. I mean,
I would say if you looked at either party 10 years ago and you told someone, I guess, let's see, in 2010, that like Democrats on a primary debate stage are going to raise their hand when they're asked if illegal immigrants should get free healthcare, they would be like, well, obviously we're not going to do that. That would be crazy.
Of course not.
Right.
Exactly.
And then if you told Republicans that in 2010, like, you're going to be the party against free trade agreements, you're going to be the party for telling what companies can do, and, and you're going to basically alienate the whole Hispanic vote, they would be like, what are you, crazy? Like, that's why Romney lost. We're not going to do any of that stuff. Both parties have just kind of like done this weird transformation. I don't know if it's good or bad, but they don't look anything like they did when we were growing up.
No, I can totally agree with that. But we were not as clued in. We didn't have the experience to look at things, the way we can now. I mean, I think it would be fascinating if we could go back in time, knowing what we know now, and look at that whole spectrum and see, how that went down. I always think back like to Ronald Reagan. I remember when he was shot, and then James Brady was shot.
Yeah.
And no matter what anyone says, like, as polarizing as everything looks right now, and everything looks crazy, it's still 50-50. I mean, I think Trump's going to win. I think he's going to win both the electoral and the popular. But even if he wins, it's not going to be by a lot. It's still going to be, in that area of where there's 50-50, and it pulls us towards the middle. I don't like anyone too far left. I don't like anyone too far right. You know, it's better to be, you know, pulling towards the middle.
So
And
tell me about this world, Chris, in 2021, where Donald J. Trump, Jared, and Stephen Miller and all that whole cast of characters are still in the White House. Like, I'm not looking forward to that if that were to happen. I feel like we would be like cities would still be smoldering, and I don't know if we'd have COVID. So. What do you think? What do you think will happen? A new morning for America, a new future?
I think that Donald Trump is a much better option than Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And I think that I think it'll be business as usual once they find hopefully, what are they called?
The vaccine?
A vaccine. Hopefully they find a vaccine soon. And hopefully the disease, slowly, hopefully we're all building up immunities. Hopefully we're all, going to be able to be stronger against it, but I think the country will thrive again. I love that he rebuilt the military. I love that. I love that he supports freedom of religion. I think that's fantastic. I love that he brings God into the conversation, as a Catholic schoolboy.
I did enjoy those days off that we would get when like a bishop or something would visit.
Remember, that was great. He would come in and just be like, "You guys have 2 weeks off." We'd be like, "Thanks."
We love the church.
Yes.
Oh man. Well, let me ask you this. What if we play this scenario out where the vaccine doesn't work, or the virus?
Why are we playing scenarios out? Let's hope for the future that's bright. Let's not, like, regardless of who wins, we want there to be a vaccine. Regardless of who wins,
No, I want
them
one
to work together. Like, I want them. If Trump wins, I want the other side to be like, you know what? Screw it. He won. So let's just work with him. Let's take care of this and let's flush it out. If Biden wins, I hope the same thing. I hope the Republicans say, let's just flush this disease out. Let's take care of the people.
Right.
That's
so
what you can hope for. Yeah.
To be clear, I would love for nothing more than us all to get a vaccine that works. At the same time, like sometimes it doesn't always work the way you planned. And my question is, like, who would we rather have in charge in a world where the vaccine took longer or didn't work? I don't know, man. I don't feel like this is the guy you want in a, kind of a rough, stormy night.
Hey, maybe it's not, but he's a better option than Joe Biden.
What is you said this a few times, you really are uncomfortable with Joe. Tell me about that.
Well, like I said, he's 0 for 2 running for president. He's been plagiarizing his whole life. He's been stealing other people's material his whole life. There's nothing authentic about the guy. He doesn't really run a good family unit. I mean, his son's a little, off the tracks, if you want to call it that. And, if you can't, like the great Jordan Peterson likes to say, like, how are you going to solve complex issues when you can't even keep your room clean? Like Joe Biden, he doesn't seem to be able to keep his room clean. So I don't think he can handle complex issues. I think one of Trump's best lines is, Biden would be nowhere unless Obama took him off the trash heap and made him his vice president. I think that's one of Trump's funnier lines. And I think it's true. Like, Joe Biden has a bad past. 0 for 2 running for president. How, like why now? Why when he's 79? And why would he care now? Like, he doesn't seem to really care. Like, he doesn't seem to be in it. He doesn't seem to have any energy. He seems to be like, oh, okay, fine, I'll do this. And he knows deep down that everybody wanted Bernie. That's why he went a little left on his side. I mean, I don't know, man. It was a rough time for the Democrats. Their most popular guy had to step down because they thought that Biden had a better chance to win.
So let me make sure I'm hearing this right. In your estimation, the Trump family is a more functional, kind of successful output of him 100%. As a father. Really?
100%. Yes.
Than the Biden family.
100%.
And the other thing you're suggesting is that because I agree, and it's been proven that Biden did plagiarize at least one speech, maybe more, in the past, but which is a form of lying, right? Taking credit for other people's work. You feel like that he has lied more than Trump?
Who, Biden?
Yeah.
I honestly, like, what has Trump lied about?
Oh my goodness.
You know, in my opinion, Trump has been the most investigated billionaire politician in the world. I mean, they even made stuff up to go after this guy. They couldn't find anything on this guy. Like he did, like I don't understand. Like he's said some pretty off things, and but with all the investigations they did on him, how could they find nothing?
So just a few examples. Like he did say that he was going to release his tax returns in 2016, and now we're in 2020, and he hasn't. Like when you say you're going to do something and then you don't do it, like,
well, according to him, he's constantly being audited, and during an audit, you can't release.
Why can't he really? He can.
I don't know. I'm not an accountant.
But you're okay with that?
Doesn't bother me. Why would you want to see his tax returns? He's a billionaire. He's losing money in the White House. I'd rather see someone's tax returns who went into politics maybe with a net worth of like $500,000. They make $160,000 a year, and 5 years later their net worth is $10 million. Let me see their tax returns. I'd rather see those than Donald Trump's. Donald Trump's been rich his whole life. What do we care?
Then just show. Then let's just see them. What's the big? Why cover them up? If there's nothing to see, then like just open up the books.
He took full advantage of all the tax laws with all the accountants and all the lawyers that he paid to do his taxes. I'm sure he'd take full advantage of the laws.
Okay, so and if he did, I think the American people would basically say, all right, well, he probably should have paid more. Like Romney, when Romney released his taxes, he only paid like 12%. I don't think people crucified him for that. It was fine. It was like, yeah, you took full advantage.
I'm the type of person that, listen, 12% of Romney is a lot more money than most people pay. You know what I'm saying? So I don't mind that whole structure. That doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah, and it doesn't bother me either. I guess my point was that if it's proven that Trump didn't pay a ton of taxes, I don't think that's a problem. I think the bigger issue is like sources of income and what obligations and debts he has and who he owes money. We don't know that.
Oh, you mean the paper trail?
Yeah.
I mean, the guy's had over, I think it's like 1,600 LLCs in his life. So there's so much going on. Like, that's why when everyone's like, oh, he's been bankrupt. No, he hasn't. I think like 4 of his 1,600 LLCs went bankrupt. So that's a pretty good success rate, if you ask me. I mean, his tax returns are probably so complicated. I don't know if anybody would want to sit through them, look at them, read them. I certainly don't have the attention span to go through Donald Trump's taxes. I mean, if he really did something illegal, he would have been arrested. I don't know where the paper trail is going to lead. I mean, you saw how much the Democrats went after him.
Just turn it over, man. Just turn it over. Let's take a look.
Well, that's just like the birth certificate. It's like, just turn it over. Just turn it over.
He was the one that kept asking for the birth certificate.
I'm just saying, it's the same thing. And if I was either one of them, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah. All right. What about him? You asked like, hey, what has Trump really lied that much? Like, what about him saying that he had nothing to do with withholding arms from the Ukrainians in exchange for Oppo research on the Bidens? Like, I think that's been established that he did ask for help with his election.
I don't think so. If he did, he would have been prosecuted.
Well, he was impeached by the House.
Yeah, but he didn't commit a crime. So, I mean, Bill Clinton actually committed a crime and he was impeached, but it was better for the country to keep him in office. And I think the same for Trump. Trump actually didn't commit a crime, which is staggering to how he got impeached. And it's so funny to me that he's already been impeached. They're going to try and impeach him again probably when he gets reelected. And I wonder for what? Maybe the post office thing?
Okay, so wait a minute. So you don't
and there's
think
a good
he did
article,
anything?
Tom. Tom, today in the Post, there's a good article
Yeah.
about a guy who fixed elections in Hudson County for 20 years.
Uh-huh.
And he said exactly how to do it. Mail-in balloting. He said there's so much fraud involved. He laid it out in the article. And one of the better ones that he would go to nursing homes and he would volunteer to fill out their cards and have them sign it. And he would just fill them out however he wanted. And he'd have them sign it and he'd mail it in. He would pay off postal workers. He would pay off various people to get things done for certain politicians. And the reason why he blew the whistle on that, because he's actually a Dem, is that he's a Bernie Sanders supporter, and he's very upset that he didn't get the nomination.
Yeah, I have no doubt that in every election there has been some amount of fraud, but I don't know if that means you should eliminate the ability of people to mail in their ballot. I think most people do mail in authentic ballots. I don't think this guy is like 50% of all mail-in ballots are.
Yeah, but there's no. How come on the mail-in ballots there's no watermarks? And they talked about this in the article. There's no like watermarks on the paper. There's no like stamping. You can photocopy a ballot. The only thing that is authentic is the return envelope. But those return envelopes, according to this gentleman, are easily obtained of non-political people who don't vote. Like you can go door to door and you can buy them from the people, and then just use those authentic return labels. Make photocopies of the ballot. They got to make it more sophisticated if they're going to do it. And I don't understand.
Now, but mail-in ballots aren't new, right? Like,
Tom, you work for Google. Why can't we just like screen our face in, put our vote in? I mean, come on. I mean, we can't vote online. Are you kidding me? Like mail-in ballots? Why can't we create a system where we can scan ourselves online or whatever we have to do our signature with our finger, however we have to do it, and then vote online? It's so easy.
Well, no system is perfectly secure. I mean, the one good thing with the mail-in ballots is you do have physical possession of evidence. So if it were, fraudulent, you could potentially kind of figure it out afterwards by, going back to the voter and saying, hey, did you send this or whatever, that kind of thing. I mean, I guess my point is when people point out potential risks in any kind of voting fraud. I mean, there's also people that say, wow, even when you go to the polls, like who knows what happens when you pull the lever? Like, what are those people doing in the high school, basketball court after the polls close? And I mean, there's all kinds of things, but I guess I just feel like these mail-in ballots that we've had them, it's not new. Like if like Republicans were elected with them in the past, like what's the deal?
Well, there's an early vote that my mom's older sister, and she's like in her early 80s now. She's been doing it for years and years. You can vote 30 days early with mail-in ballots. So
right.
No, it's been going on for a long time. You're right. But I can see where like, I think it's a little paranoid to think there would be that much fraud. But I think it's definitely a safeguard, because I think Trump feels like he's in a position to win, and he thinks that, the only way the Democrats can win is to cheat. So, and it just stinks that both sides are so untrusting of the other side, and they have no like commonality to work together.
That is sad.
It's so sad. I don't think it didn't seem to be like that when we were younger. Like it seemed like there was still like hope that like they would serve the people, and then I don't know, and then cut their differences somewhere else, but not publicly. I mean, it's almost embarrassing. Like when Nancy Pelosi ripped up the speech, that was hilarious. Like this is like entertainment now. What do they always say? Politics is entertainment for ugly people.
That could very well be true. Let me try one last alleged Trump lie, because you asked me if I had any examples, because I don't think you're buying the Ukraine thing. No. You're not buying his arguments around promising to repeal and replace Obamacare. I mean, that was a very clear thing. He said he would replace it with something that was cheaper and better.
That whole thing is really complicated. I mean, even the Obama administration had a really rough time with that. I mean, even with the website, think about it. So it's
But
really,
Trump did say like, "Oh, I'm a businessman. I could build a website in like half a day."
that was probably a boast he shouldn't have made, because who's it's really beyond a lot of people. I mean, it's really difficult.
Oh
to,
yeah.
To figure that one out. The Medicare medical thing here is very, very complicated. And it's funny to me that people, like average people, think that they have like the answers. I don't know, man. That would be a huge undertaking for even a big think tank of healthcare professionals and
Yeah.
business people. And, I don't think Trump or, I think Obama made a valid effort at it, and I think his intentions were good, but I don't think he realized, even though his wife is very knowledgeable in that area, I don't think that's a task that you need everybody's support, and you need,
that's not what I agree with you, but that's not what I heard when he was campaigning. He was said that this is a disaster. Like, let me show you how it's done. When I'm elected, I'm gonna have more coverage for less costs with better outcomes. And then people were chanting, repeal and replace, repeal and replace. I didn't see any of that. It's 4 years now.
Well, I got to tell you, during Obama's time, I had a cafe, a little piece of a cafe, and it screwed up everything for everybody. Like, I had people get fined for not having insurance. I had to like pay certain people's Obamacare, and people lost their coverage. He did lie about you can keep your doctor. That wasn't true.
Wait, I thought we were talking about Trump lies.
What's that?
We were talking about things that Trump said
I don't
that weren't
think Trump
true.
lied. That's not a lie, though, Tom. To say you're gonna do something.
Okay, so that's just a promise not kept. A big promise not kept. All right.
That's a promise not kept. I wouldn't call that a lie.
Okay, what about saying that the Mueller report was a complete, total exoneration? I read the report. It did not sound like a complete, total exoneration.
Yeah, but look at what's going on with that. I mean, it's obvious that Mueller was bipartisan. I mean, not bipartisan, was totally
partisan.
I mean, that was just a witch hunt.
Okay, but you could say I believe this report was partisan. I believe that Mueller was biased, and so the report is garbage. But that's not that would have been, maybe that I could say, okay, I disagree with you, but that's fine. But that's not what he said. He said, look, I have been completely exonerated by this report. And then I read the report, I'm like, no, this is not a complete
What else would you think Donald Trump would say?
That
he's going to give you the best case scenario in his mind of the outcome to sell you that. Completely exonerated.
But it's not true.
Well, he's hoping that the average person doesn't read it like you did.
They should download the PDF, all volumes. It's great reading.
Those things don't hold my attention. I get halfway through and I'm like, come on. Because they use certain words that aren't tied to fact. And I don't like that. Well,
you know what, Chris? Unfortunately, we are out of time, but I very much appreciate us reconnecting. I don't think we're going to agree, but I do appreciate the fact that we were able to trade our perspectives and like we can still smile and be friends and friendly. I wish the rest of the country could have a little more exchange. Like, yeah, maybe we don't agree, but at least like I kind of feel I can get a sense of where you're coming from, and I feel like, yeah, here's a guy who's kind of frustrated with basically politics as usual. You want to shake it up. You see a guy that speaks very directly and bluntly, and you appreciate that, and I get that.
On a vessel.
Yeah, I get that. Well, let's hope that the country makes a decision that results in the best outcome possible, whoever that is, and that we can all like get back and be healthy and prosper and just live our lives again.
I do want to make the same prediction I made in 2016 in San Francisco when I was totally laughed at by conservatives and Republicans at the same time.
Yeah.
And I told you this before.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
will predict that he will win again. Trump will win again. And, you know, and after he does, we can have another.
Well, we're gonna have to
talk.
have you back on November. You know, in mid-November, if they're still counting the ballots or whatever. I worry that it's going to be another like Florida kind of circus where they're going to argue over every vote, and
I
we
think
may
so.
not know. We may not know for a while.
Yeah, and I hope that whoever loses, you know, doesn't hold up the process of.
Yes, just take the high ground and
Yes.
let the country move on, whichever way it is.
And if Biden wins, I hope the Republicans show up at his inauguration.
You have to have the last word. I'll let you have the last word, Chris. Thank you so much. We'll have to have you back on again, sir. And with that, we're going to say goodbye, nerds.
Goodbye, nerds.